Let's go through an example of deploying the instant BQML solution for Google Analytics 4 properties. So generally with the instant BQML form, it's just best to go from top to bottom. And so the first thing that is requested is the CRMint Acknowledgment, which says, did you run the command below in the Google Cloud Shell terminal yet? So I'll go ahead and copy that command, and then I'll head on over to my Google Cloud console, and I'll activate the Cloud Shell. I'll acknowledge this, and it'll go through provisioning a Cloud Shell and setting up Cloud Shell instance. So now I can go ahead and paste in the command that I copied from the instant BQML form and hit enter. And it will start to go through its deployment procedure. In the first step here, we're just downloading a Docker container that controls the command line interface for CRMint to ensure that when we deploy the application, we're doing it in a consistent way. So here I'll go ahead and authorize Cloud Shell to make API calls. And the first thing now is it's just going to ask whether or not we can share some usage information with CRMint. So you can say yes or no, completely up to you, and hit enter. And so now it's going to go ahead and activate some cloud services, as it says there in the deployment. And the last piece of configuration we have to do here is in terms of what region we want to deploy the CRMint application. And so you can pick one that is geographically close to you or where you have set things up previously. And all you have to do is just type in the index or the number associated with your compute region and then hit enter. And so now it's going to go through a checklist to just make sure that all of my permissions are correct in order to actually deploy the CRMint application. Takes a moment on this retrieve billing account name step, but we'll just be here for a moment longer as it starts to initiate the Terraform script, and then we'll just kind of let CRMint deploy in the background for the next several minutes, and we'll go ahead and complete the remainder of the steps in the instant BQML form. It's just initializing Terraform and is retrieving the Docker images to deploy the application. So here it's now just applying the Terraform plan that you see summarized above. And as it indicates here on the command line, that'll be about 10 more minutes. So what we can do at this point is kind of allow CRMint to go through its deployment, and we can come back to the instant BQML form now and just hit the yes toggle over here because we ran that command below. And so now we can just move on to the next step in the instant BQML form, which is asking us about a marketing objective. And so with instant BQML, it makes it very easy to configure different models to various objectives. And when it comes to instant BQML for Google Analytics 4 properties, we've looked at lots of different types of common sorts of events or measurement that might be associated with Google Analytics 4 properties. And we've sort of packaged them up into these marketing objectives, where, for example, you can easily select purchase propensity or repeat purchase propensity, which uses elements of e-commerce from the schema, or product propensity, which goes a level deeper into that export schema. Or you could do something as flexible as event propensity, where pretty much anything that you're measuring inside of your Google Analytics 4 property can be modeled so long as you're measuring it. Everything in Google Analytics 4 is an event. So what you can do here is we might want to go ahead and select event propensity, let's say. And so when we select event propensity, what we're doing in this particular case is we're optimizing to a specific event that is being measured inside of Google Analytics 4. So to kind of make that a little bit more concrete, what we can do is actually take a look at a Google Analytics 4 property. And this is the Google Analytics 4 property for instant BQML, the actual form that I'm on right now. And if I go into the admin area in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a page over here called Events that is listing out all of the different events that have fired on my Google Analytics 4 property over the last 28 days. And so this is actually a great resource to identify events for an event propensity model using instant BQML, because this will be where they're all listed. And so if you have a particular event that's like beyond purchase or something a little bit more custom, maybe you want to do, a form sign up or account creation or really any event, this would be a great place to look for that. And the reason why is because it gives you all of the event names. And so for our example, what I'm going to do is I'm always interested to understand what is the likelihood of a user that comes to the instant BQML form. What is their likelihood to actually download a pipeline? That's an important sort of measurement and KPI for this particular example. But you can sort of abstract that to other sorts of machine learning examples. So for our purposes, I was going to do an event that is named download training pipeline. So we're going to tune this model to anybody who has downloaded a training pipeline is going to train the model in a slightly different way depending on those users that have downloaded a training pipeline versus those that have not. And so the output of this model is really going to be a score that is going to tell me what is the likelihood of a user to do this event in Google Analytics 4. And so that's kind of the first configuration. And so then the next thing that we need to put in is, it looks like there's two fields for this really. There's a cloud project ID for your Google Analytics 4 BigQuery export. And then there's a cloud project ID for your CRMint application. And so in order to get that information about the Google Analytics 4 BigQuery export, what we can do is, it might make sense to find that information directly in GA4 to see where the BigQuery link has been set up. So let's go ahead and head back to our Google Analytics 4 property. And we can go over to the admin section. And let's see if we go to down at the bottom here, BigQuery links. This particular Google Analytics 4 property is sending its information to a project ID called Instant BQML Demo Environment. So I'm just going to grab that value. And then I'm going to come back over to the Instant BQML form. And I'm going to paste that in here because that's the cloud project ID for the GA4 BigQuery export. However, in this particular example, I'm deploying my CRMint application where I executed that command at the beginning in a different project. So that actually has a different project ID. And so if we come back over here, we can see, okay, our applying of the Terraform plan is still in process. I'm going to kind of drag this down a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this project ID because this is where we're deploying the CRMint application. And that's totally fine. You can deploy your CRMint application in the same project where your Google Analytics 4 BigQuery export is going, or a separate one. It looks like the configuration is now just moving along. I saw some extra commands taking place at the bottom there, which is good. And so I'll just grab that value as I said, and we'll go back over to the Instant BQML form and we'll plug that in. So now this next field is a prefix, a BigQuery prefix. It's part of the overall sort of like artifacts that are created in your pipeline. We want to be able to just like keep them organized so that when we do generate tables, you know that what they're related to. So this is just a prefix for that. But on top of that, we're also going to use this prefix as the name of your user property in Google Analytics. And so we need to come up with a BigQuery prefix that kind of describes what it is that we're doing with a maximum of 24 characters. So we could do something like download training demo. This is my downloading of my training pipeline, and then this is for a demo. So that's what the BigQuery prefix is going to be on this particular model. And so now we're kind of transitioning to slightly different pieces of information here. We've kind of been cloud-centric to this point, where we've kind of looked at project IDs and thinking about BigQuery prefixes. Now what we're going to be doing is focusing more on like Google Analytics data. And so the first thing that we want to just determine is, what is the type of data stream that we're modeling here? With the Instant BQML form, you can do all three types of Google Analytics data streams that you might be measuring through Google Analytics. For our purposes, we're just going to be doing web, but you could also do iOS and Android. So when I select web, now it's asking me an additional field, which is my Google Analytics measurement ID. So I can go ahead and head back over to Google Analytics, and I can go and grab that measurement ID, which I can find in data streams, and then I select my web property here, and then it'll show up and it'll show me my measurement ID over here. So I'm going to grab that. I've copied that, and so now I'm just going to go ahead and bring that back into the instant BQML form, and I'll paste it in there. Next, it's asking about a Google Analytics API secret. And so in order to integrate the data from BigQuery back into Google Analytics, the approach that we're using is called measurement protocol. And with Google Analytics 4, they introduced an API secret that you need to generate along with sending your information to Google Analytics 4. So it's very easy to set one up, and that's essentially what we're having to do in this particular step. So we just need to head back to our Google Analytics account. And so we're right here where we grabbed our measurement ID. And in fact, right here is where you can go ahead and set up your measurement protocol API secrets just by clicking on this link over here. And what I'll go ahead and do is, there's various ones that you can grab that may be pre-existing, or you can go ahead and create a new one. You could say something like demo. It feels like maybe this particular one is at its limit for the amount of measurement protocol API secrets. So let me go ahead and I'll just select one that's pre-existing. I'll copy that value, and I'll head back to the form with the information that we now have from Google Analytics. So I'll just plug that value in. So moving right along, now we just need to insert the Google Analytics property ID, which we can find under property settings. So I'll go ahead and switch back. There's a little bit of switching back and forth, but it's just about kind of collecting the information that we need. And so now we can copy this property ID for this particular Google Analytics 4 property. And once again, we'll just head back to the instant BQML form and plug it right in there. And so then these last two sorts of questions here are related to the Google Analytics BigQuery export dataset location and then the frequency. And once again, that information is readily available when you go into your Google Analytics account. Just go right back here to Google Analytics, scroll down to your BigQuery links, and inside of it, we can get both of those pieces of information. So first of all, the location for the dataset creation is United States for this particular dataset, and then the frequency of the dataset is daily and streaming. And so the reason that these questions sort of generally exist in the form, just in general, is in case your data is stored, first of all, in a different location. We need to be able to share that information with the BigQuery API so that your BigQuery API jobs are configured. And then as far as the BigQuery frequency is concerned, is that the Google Analytics 4 BigQuery export has two exports. One is a daily export and one is kind of more of a streaming or export. And they're placed in tables that have different suffixes. And so what we're doing here essentially is that if you're only using the streaming export, or if you're only using the daily export, we can modify the underlying query that is building the model and is extracting the data to make predictions so that it works with your particular setup. Many of the toggles that we flip along the way with instant BQML are really just there to modify the underlying code, which is all done in JavaScript. So if you really wanted to, you could even just look at the page source to see how these different sorts of labels affect the underlying model that's created. So anywho, now we have these permissions acknowledgements at the end, and then it looks like we're pretty much done with the form, but let's go ahead and take care of these first. So the first thing it says is, did you add editor permissions for the service account, which is this value here? This is the service account in question, to the Google Analytics property under property or account access management yet? Okay. So what I'm needing to do here is essentially take this service account and I'm going to give it editor permissions to my property under property or account access management. So let's go ahead and head back to Google Analytics. And here I am in Google Analytics. And so I have property access management and account access management. I'll add them here at property access management. And I'll go ahead and hit this plus button in the upper right-hand corner. I'll add a user, which is this CRMint jobs service account. And I'm going to give them editor permissions by marking it down here. And then I'll say we don't need to notify this new user by email. It's just a robot. So I'll go ahead and add it. Okay, so that step is done. And the reason that that step is done is so that the CRMint service account, which does all of the orchestration of this advanced marketing activation between BigQuery and Google Analytics, is so that it can make modifications to the Google Analytics 4 property and specifically create audiences. So the end of this particular deployment is going to actually give you audience segments that you can then use in Google Ads or other sorts of marketing platforms that connect to Google Analytics. So I'll go back here now and I'll tell you, yeah, we just did that. And then because of the fact that we are setting up CRMint in a separate project of the native project through which our Google Analytics 4 BigQuery export is being sent, we need to give this service account BigQuery data viewer permissions to the data set where we are actually collecting our GA4 data, so that the CRMint application can read that Google Analytics data do its analysis, and then make all the changes directly in that application. So once again, I'm just going to grab this service account, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head on over to the Google Cloud account where my Google Analytics for BigQuery export is going, which is the instant BQML demo environment. And what I will do is I'm going to open up BigQuery. And I'm going to open up my account over here. And then this was the data set that the instant BQML form said needed to have BigQuery data viewer access. It's this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this particular data set. And I'll add a principal here. And I'll put in that service account. And the role that I'll give it is BigQuery Data Viewer. So this will enable this service account to go ahead and read the data and from the tables within this particular data set. Hit save. And what that effectively does is it will allow the service account to read from these events and events intraday tables that are being populated from the GA4 BigQuery export. Great. So now that we've done that, once again, we'll just head back to the instant BQML form and we'll hit the checkbox yes. And when we do that, now we have these two buttons illuminate at the bottom, which say download training pipeline and download prediction pipeline. So when I do that, it's going to go ahead and download these JSON instructions for my CRMint application. That's going to create a BigQuery machine learning model that is tuned to the marketing objective that we put earlier, which is to download a training pipeline, and is then going to create a model to describe the likelihood of a user that comes through Google Analytics to actually perform that high value action. And then we're going to take that prediction that came from BigQuery machine learning, and we're going to reintegrate it back into Google Analytics 4 and create audience segments based off of that. So let's see how far in the process we are with deploying CRMint. So I will come back now to my project where I'm deploying CRMint. And I'm seeing at the bottom here, there is a link that I can go with a secured URL for CRMint. And so we can go ahead and click on that link. And what that will do is it will show me that I need to log in order to go to my cloud IAP protected application. And so I'll select my user account. And then this is now your CRMint application. And so your CRMint application is going to be responsible for orchestrating a lot of these integrations for you. And so what we can do next is those JSON files that we just downloaded from the instant BQML form. We'll go over to import by template here in the upper right hand corner of CRMint, and we'll click that. And so now I'm just selecting the training pipeline JSON file and hitting open. And when I do that, it's importing the instant BQML pipeline instructions into my CRMint application. And as you can see, this is our download training demo training pipeline, which is built on BigQuery machine learning for Google Analytics 4. So now I'll go ahead and hit import by template again, and this time I'm going to select the prediction pipeline. And so when I do that, once again, the prediction pipeline then is uploaded into the CRMint application. So at this point now, what I'd want to do is just execute the queries to make sure that they actually work. And so this is the training pipeline of for instant BQML. It's made up of 2 SQL queries. The first one is to create a BigQuery dataset in case one doesn't exist. And so once this page loads, I can show you the direct SQL query that was generated. And so this is a BQ script executor, and it's going to create a schema if it doesn't exist, create the database if it doesn't exist, and then it's using some variables in it, like the CRMint project ID and a BQ dataset ID. So that's essentially what the first job is doing, and that will account for situations where, like this one, where you're creating an entirely new application for your CRMint. And so we just need to be able to create tables in a data set, and this is the data set that's going to be created in that new Google Cloud project that's housing CRMint. The second job here in the training pipeline is the BigQuery machine learning model. And so you can take a look here that by default, the BigQuery machine learning model is using a boosted tree regressor. And you can take a look at kind of some of the underlying SQL logic with how we are ultimately identifying the event, right? We're doing a simple sort of regular expression on the event for the event name that we put in earlier from the instant BQML form. And while we're looking at this sort of text editor and SQL code, it's really important to understand that this is a text editor for a reason, because you can modify every little bit of the SQL that is generating this model. So if you want to do additional feature engineering, so we have several features in here that were built by a data science team, but obviously based off of your own contextual situation, you can go ahead and modify the features to make them more specific to your own business, draw on different pieces of measurement that you're doing in Google Analytics 4 to enhance the model. You certainly should feel able to do that. And then pretty much any source of data inside of BigQuery can be used as part of this model by joining onto other data sets, etc. So that's kind of one thing that's really, really important to get across about the usage of CRMint, is that this is also supposed to be a really flexible environment in which you can iterate and sort of improve the model as time goes on. So, now that we've kind of looked a little bit at those pieces, I'm going to go ahead and hit this button that says Run Pipeline. And so when I hit Run Pipeline, I'm going to get the interface to tell me that the pipeline is running, and I can kind of start to see that there are different icons associated with these jobs in the pipeline here. The Create BQ Dataset job already finished. It has a green check mark. And now it appears as though the event propensity training job, the actual BigQuery machine learning part of the job, is in progress. It's just got this like blue plus button. And so, one thing to note is that, we kind of just ran this manually one time now. And I think that that's a very important first thing to do, especially when you're deploying instant BQML. But in order to really extract the true value of this solution, you just want to tap into the fact that CRMint can automate all of this for you by toggling this run on schedule in the upper right-hand corner. So when you do that, you'll see that this is going to now run on schedule on Saturdays at 7 p.m. The way that this particular pipeline has been designed by default is to run on a weekly cadence. And the reason that it runs on a weekly cadence is so that, we can refresh your model over the last 12 months worth of data. And so you're constantly always looking at the freshest snapshot, and your training, your model is always based off of the freshest sort of information. So really encourage you to put it on a schedule in order to unleash the full power of instant BQML and CRMint. So that is already running there. And so some other places to look at within the CRMint UI is we can also go over to the logs tab here. And when you're on the logs tab, this is kind of giving you a sense of the actual underlying pieces that are being run. And so you can see here that, we had a job that's called create BQ dataset that was run, and this was the script that was run. And similarly, we can see this rather large script running for the event propensity training job, right? And so that might take, a couple of minutes to actually fully train and complete. But another thing that you can do outside of the CRMint interface is we can actually go directly back into Google Cloud, and we can take a look at this in BigQuery. So I just exited out of the Cloud Shell at the bottom there. And this is my CRMint application project. And now I'm going into BigQuery. And I'm just going to cancel out of this welcome to BigQuery. And if I go here at the bottom in the project history area, I can see, okay, there was one query that appeared to execute completely and successfully. And that was the first job in our CRMint pipeline, training pipeline. And then this is the training pipeline, or the training query that's running now, and you can kind of see that it's still in progress. And if I go over to these three vertical dots, these actions, I can open the query in the editor, and I can kind of get a sense, oh, okay, this has actually been running for close to about 4 minutes now. This is the literal query that is being trained on. So if I want to make any further modifications to the model or the features or anything like that, this is also a great place for me to start doing that. And then I can always incorporate those changes back into my CRMint architecture, which is really sort of orchestrating the integration of the BigQuery machine learning model predictions back into Google Analytics 4. So that's just something to be aware of, and hopefully we'll get a chance to view the output of this in just a couple of minutes, and we can kind of take a look at some of the evaluation metrics and the explainability, which I think is really, really impressive as well. So let's go back to our CRMint application. We kind of took a little bit of a look at the training pipeline so far. And so now if we go back to see all of our pipelines, we can see that the training pipeline is currently running. And now let's go and take a look at the prediction pipeline and the components there. So within the prediction pipeline, we have a couple more jobs, but keeping it pretty lean to begin with. And so the first job is pretty straightforward. It's just a prediction. We're using the model that we're currently training using BigQuery machine learning, and we're using the heuristics of BigQuery machine learning, ml.predict in this particular case, to make predictions based off of new information or new users that are coming to our website and people who came yesterday, essentially. So in this particular prediction script, what ends up happening is we're predicting based off of everyone who has come to the website for the last 12 months. And we look at all of their usage patterns over that 12-month period in aggregate, and then we output a prediction for that user. So, hypothetically, let's say over the past 12 months, you had 1,000 users come to your website. We're going to make a prediction in this particular step for each one of those 1,000 users. Okay. And so that's essentially what's going on in this particular step is we're creating this new table, which is called predictions, and we're filling it with a unique identifier and whatever their prediction is according to the boosted tree regressor BigQuery machine learning algorithm that we're currently training. In the next step, where we extract scores, what we're really going to be doing in this particular step is we're taking those list of 1,000 users, who have come to your website over the last 12 months, and we're going to isolate that down to only the users that came yesterday. We're only going to send information back to Google Analytics for the users who came to your website yesterday, and we're going to send a new score for those individuals. So the reason that this is done is because if they didn't come to your score if they didn't come to your property yesterday, there's no additional information about that user. Their score is likely the same, and we only need to update that heuristic for either new users who came yesterday or returning users who came yesterday, because based off of different usage patterns, maybe their score either went up or down. And so that's essentially what goes on in extract scores, in addition to sort of what I would say structuring the data in a format so that we can ready it for measurement protocol. And so essentially what we do is we output a parameter, this unique client ID. We have that, predicted value that we got from the previous step. And then we just also send that with a timestamp that will most likely be in the last 24 hours based off of the last visit that user came to the website. This is particularly helpful with associating the measurement protocol event to a historical time, which does not influence or impact reporting in any particular way. So that's a really nice innovation for measurement protocol in Google Analytics 4, in my opinion. So that's kind of, I would say, a transformation of the prediction data. And then what we do is we start taking that transformed data and predictions, and we start bringing that back into Google Analytics and do useful and meaningful things with it. So the first one is, if you haven't already, you define a user property inside of Google Analytics 4. So this step is really important so that we can associate this score with a particular user. It kind of is likened to a custom dimension. And to kind of give you a little bit more of an idea of what that looks like, we can just go into Google Analytics, and we can take a look here at custom definitions. And you'll see that there are some definitions here already. And the prediction pipeline that comes with Instant BQML is going to actually create that for you. So that's what this step in the process is doing. And we'll see that as soon as the training pipeline has finished training. After we define that user property, then we're actually going to send those measurement protocol events back to Google Analytics 4. And what we're going to be doing is showing you, like, this is the template essentially that Google Analytics 4 measurement protocol is expecting, and we're using output from the previous transformation step where we have the client ID, that event timestamp, a parameter name, and a value, and we're going to be dynamically inserting that into this JSON template here. And so that's going to read from that table and then is going to dynamically insert the values here and is going to send that back to Google Analytics 4 through measurement protocol. The next job is relating to audience boundaries. And so what we want to do is we want to create audiences using these predictive scores. And we want to do it in a way that we're isolating roughly 20% chunks of your users. And so this particular SQL script is just a utility to help calculate, based off of the total number of users that we've made predictions for, how can we isolate, or what are the scores per each one of the quintiles when we're actually creating the audience segmentation. So in this particular approach, what we're seeing is, here we have a tier, which is the display name of the audience. So we're going to get like quintile 1, download training demo BQML. That's going to be the name of one of the audiences. And then we're also going to have these greater than or less than values associated with each one of those audience segments, because our predictions by default are based off of a value between 1 and 1,000. And so, what we want to do is we want to create audiences where we're actually isolating about 20% of the users in that audience. And so there might be a small amount of fluctuation around the actual score, where we might have to say, okay, it's users who have a score greater than 800 or greater than 600 but less than 800. And so that's essentially what this script is doing, is it's organizing information about the audience segmentation, so that when we use the Google Analytics 4 Audience API in order to generate the audiences, we have the upper and lower bounds for each. And then the final job is just a definition for how to actually create the Google Analytics for audiences using the Audience API here. And so you'll see, certain information here relating to the display name of the audience, a description, membership duration. And then you'll see here that we're kind of isolating that, that parameter name, that user property. We're saying less than a particular value, it's going to be one thing, or greater than a particular value is another thing. And so this is kind of just the underlying sort of kind of logic that's going into the actual prediction pipeline. So at the end of it, what we get is audience segmentation inside of Google Analytics 4. But let's take a look at our pipelines now. And it looks like our training pipeline has succeeded. So what we can now do is, because we have a training pipeline that has successfully succeeded, we can now run our prediction pipeline. And so I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and run pipeline. And when I do this, I'm also going to simultaneously bring up the Google Analytics real-time report. Let me go ahead and share this tab instead. Because when I do so, what I'm hoping is that, the model is going to take a little bit of time to predict right now. And then it's going to go through, after it's made that prediction, it's going to do that transformation. And then it's going to start defining a user property and sending those events back into Google Analytics. And so if I come back over here just for a moment, you'll see that the user property has now been defined. And if I come back here, we should kind of see a little bit of an influx of events, which we see over here, which is the event name, download training demo BQML, that we were sending back over to the Google Analytics 4 property. So those are our measurement protocol hits. And along with that, let's see if we go in here. So those are the events that were sent over that had our predictive scores associated with the user property. Now, if we go into our admin section and we go to custom definitions, we'll see, look, here's a new user property that was created through the instant BQML pipeline called download training demo, which was also the BigQuery prefix that we used initially on the instant BQML form. So now we have this sort of dimension, this extra dimension associated with each user, and now we can send a score to describe the likelihood of that user to actually download the training pipeline as part of this overarching advanced marketing activation, right? And then on top of that, not only do we get the custom definition, but if we look in the audiences, let's see, sometimes this just needs a full refresh here. If we go to the audiences, let's see, we'll give it a moment to load. We should see quintiles here that are defined based off of our download training demo BQML data. that we've just analyzed. So let's take a look, for example, at this audience. I'll just go ahead and edit it. But you'll see here, kind of like based off of some of the information we were going through relating to the publication of the audience, this is where it comes into play, is that we've now created this audience segment where a user has to have this download training demo user parameter, right? Which is what we just set up. And for those that are in quintile 1, they'll have a score greater than or equal to 755 and less than or equal to 1001. So this is also, kind of defining those 20% chunks. Here, for example, quintile 2, we see that users who fall in a range of a score of 546 to 756, that's going to be like your next chunk of 20 users, and so on and so forth down through quintile 3, 4, and 5. So that's pretty remarkable that we've filled out the instant BQML form with these high-level details. We've trained a BigQuery machine learning model based off of the Google Analytics 4 data in order to optimize who or calculate the likelihood of a particular user to download a training pipeline from the instant BQML form. And then we ran the prediction pipeline, and it set up this custom definition and created these audience segments inside of Google Analytics for us. And so the output of this is, if you have your Google Analytics account, for example, linked to a Google Ads account or something like that, or some other product like Display and Video 360, for example, you can then go over to that platform, like I'm showing in this particular example, which is just a sandbox sort of Google Ads implementation, but I have this Google Ads account linked to my Google Analytics account. What I can then do is go into Tools and Settings, and there's this area called Audience Manager. And when I go into Audience Manager, you'll see that I have available to me those quintile audiences that I created using BigQuery machine learning, essentially. So the BigQuery machine learning and the predictions based off of that is feeding intelligence to Google Analytics, and then using the instant BQML framework is creating these quintile audiences that are then being pushed automatically to Google Ads, where I can then take these quintiles or my top quintiles, and I can add them to different campaigns and ad groups to either target those individuals or increase my bid on those particular individuals. And those are some of the best sorts of use cases for these marketing analytics sort of use cases initially, because the whole idea is to help you drive improved marketing performance using the power of cloud machine learning. And, hopefully what I've just demonstrated for you kind of shows an end-to-end sort of implementation of how you would do that. But I also don't want to kind of suggest that this is the only thing that you can do. There's lots of other approaches, and also I think the real sort of opportunity that exists here is, now that you have this infrastructure available to you through the instant BQML approach and CRMint, now what you can do is, using your own business knowledge, using your own contextual information that you know about your business, you can go ahead and enhance these models to make them work better and more intelligently for you, so that you can go ahead and reap, amazing sorts of optimization from using cloud machine learning capabilities in conjunction with data that you are collecting and measuring inside of Google Cloud, and machine learning capabilities on top of that. Hopefully that was a useful overview for you. But please, if you do have any questions relating to Instant BQML, please do feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.